You, I understand, were in Yemen and you heard mention of this place in Saudi Arabia where they were essentially rehabbing terrorists. Saudi Arabia had created this facility. You were like, I got to know more. Now the audience knows enough about you to know, like, yes, when you say you got to know more, you really got to know more and you do something about it. So you go to Saudi Arabia. Now you decide to make a documentary film. And amazingly, while the New York Times had done a story on this facility and some other publications, no one got the kind of access you did, probably because of your familiarity with the language and so on. Over a year, you have access to this facility on a very intimate level, and wind up following 4 guys in particular for the course of 12 to 16 months, the Mohammed bin Nayef Counseling and Care Center in Riyadh. And so that must have been extraordinary for you just to be given that kind of access. So how did that come about? Did the guys agree to be the subjects of the documentary? Because I'm sure a lot of them were like, oh no.
Yeah. So it's a bit of, I'll try to Cliff Note version that. So it took me a year to get the access that I got. It was a lot of back channeling, back and forth between people at the Ministry of Interior. And it took really, really long time. And what you have to understand about places like Saudi Arabia is they never tell you no. They just throw hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle in front of you until you kind of just give up. And, like I was talking to someone the other day, I'm like, I am very bad at a lot of things. Can't spell. I'm horrible at like fixing a car, but I got tenacity for days. So I was like up to the challenge. And got to the point where I emailed them and then they emailed me back. And I think in the exchange was like, we asked everyone in the Al Hayr prison, which is this prison that's exclusively for terrorists. And then we asked everyone at the rehab center and no one wants to talk to you and no one wants to be a part of your film. And then I emailed them back. I'm like, well, can I just meet with them? Like, I'll just meet with them. And if they, let me ask them. And so basically, we went back and forth for a while and then finally they acquiesced and then came the hurdle, which was you can go to the Al Hayr and you can go to the rehab center, but you're not allowed to film one frame unless these men agree to film with you from the jump, meaning that I couldn't spend weeks trying to gain their trust in order to, see if they wanted to be on this project. They had to agree from day one, which they knew was never going to happen because most of these guys have either just come back from Guantanamo and after being tortured from, the country that I belong to, or they just came back from Syria fighting with ISIS. And they were right. When I sat down with a bunch of these different groups, I sat down with a group of older Al-Qaeda guys and started speaking to them in Arabic and they wouldn't even look at me or acknowledge my presence. I met with a group of younger ISIS guys, same thing. But then something very serendipitous happened. Saudi Arabia had just taken its first batch of non-Saudi nationals into the rehab program. And they just happened to be from Yemen. And so when I sat down with them and I started talking, I had put on my thickest, Yemeni accent I could muster. Their heads popped up and they're like, why do you speak our mother tongue? And I told them I used to live in Yemen and they're like, where? And I said in the old city near the Sila. And then they're like, wait a minute, near this place? And I was like, yeah, it's the best Fasa restaurant all of the Yemen. Sorry, I should have muted that. But yeah, I think that like there began this immediate rapport and we started talking and we talked for hours and, talked about Yemen because they hadn't been back in over 15 years to their home country. And at the very end of it, I said, would anyone like to speak to me one-on-one? And I would love to hear more about your individual stories. And a couple of hands went up. And then I talked to those guys, and then word spread throughout the rehab center that, Meg wasn't a normal journalist. She was like a white Yemeni, and kind of doors opened up. And I wound up interviewing about over 150 of these guys. Of that 150, only 30 were interested in doing the project. Of that 30, only 12 were interested in doing the project without having their face blurred or being disguised. And for me, it was imperative to be able to have the audience, look at these men in the eyes to have that kind of like understanding and human connection. So, it was a myriad of like Slumdog Millionaire moments all put together, and then luck, if that makes sense, of getting access to this place.
It's amazing. Like the footage, my jaw dropped as I was watching it. Like, it's incredible what goes on at this facility, right? Because it's like, well, how do you rehab someone who's an accused terrorist, or even in some cases an admitted terrorist? These guys came from Gitmo and they'd been fighting on the battlefields, right? It's like, how do you rehab somebody? Like, it's like, how do you take, forgive the analogy, but for those who have admitted being part of Al-Qaeda, somebody who's like a trained pit bull, trained to hurt others and get the dog to no longer attack, right? And it's when you
honestly,
take a terrorist.
What I would say in terms of the rehab program, and this is something that surprised me, and I think surprised a lot of people when they watch it. So I was expecting to go there and it just be religious classes. But a lot of these guys who are coming from Guantanamo went in when they were like, went to Guantanamo when they were like teenagers or early 20s, and they'd been there for 15 years. And so a lot of these classes are not like, yes, there's classes to teach them about their religion and de-radicalize them, but there are also classes on like counseling to treat their PTSD from Guantanamo, or other things like teaching them how to survive in the world we have now. Like, what is the internet? Because when these guys went into Guantanamo, there was no Facebook, there was no Google.
It's amazing.
And so they don't realize like the change that the world has had. So it's not just rehabilitating their idea of what Islam is and what jihad is. It's also kind of giving them life skills. So when they leave the center, they can actually function in the current world in terms of, there's classes there where they kind of teach them how to find a wife. Right? Because a lot of these guys are quite old for being single in the Arab world.
If you're like me, you're growing more and more concerned about the future. The market's all over the place. Inflation is at its highest level in 40 years. Interest rates are skyrocketing. Market experts are predicting, and already in some cases using the term recession, but also terms like economic hurricane and unprecedented. If you want to protect your future, call a precious metal dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They can show you how to protect your savings and retirement accounts by diversifying your portfolio with physical gold and silver. All it takes to get started is a short phone call, and they will have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. And they keep it simple. They're the highest rated firm in the country with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. And as an exclusive offer for my fans, if you call them right now, they'll give you up to $1,500 of free silver and a free safe on qualifying orders. So don't wait, call now. It's 866-518-2955. Call 866-518-2955 or just text my name, Megyn, to 65532. Again, call 866-518-2955 or text MEGYN to 65532. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.